Good afternoon. Welcome to NeoCon's presentation this afternoon in partnership with AEC Daily. We would like to welcome you to the presentation, Blockchain and NFT in Architecture and Design. This presentation qualifies for 1 AIA Learning Unit and 0.1 IDCEC Continuing Education Unit. In order to receive a certificate and credit, you will need to attend the duration of the presentation today. Within 3 business days of this, you will receive an email from AEC Daily with a link to access your certificate. Your AIA credit will be reported within 7 business days, and you can self-report to IDCEC. During this presentation, if you have any questions, please pose them through the questions box, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you enjoy today's presentation. Liana, take it away.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Good afternoon, NeoCon and Chicago. Good evening, London, and konnichiwa from Tokyo. I'm Liana O'Cleary, and today we'll be discussing the use of blockchain and non-fungible tokens in architecture and design. It's been a wild year for blockchain, with NFTs in particular making headlines. While blockchain adoption had once been cautious, we're now going to take a look at where meaningful traction has been made. Our presentations today explore the use of NFTs for something different as architecture and design interventions to help mitigate the climate and biodiversity crises. So what are you going to learn today? Well, by the end of this hour, you should understand a little bit about blockchain technology and the NFT process. You're going to be more aware of how blockchain and NFTs can transform spaces and offer new solutions to environmental challenges. We'll explore how monetary incentives can be reconciled with environmental ones. And we'll discuss the relationship between blockchain technologies and AI. So I'm going to kick off by briefly introducing you to all of our speakers. And then after that, I'm going to hand you over to Lira Luis, who's going to present first. So first, let me introduce myself. I'm Liana O'Cleary. I'm an interaction designer and fellow of the Royal Society for the Arts. I'm pursuing my master's in global innovation design at the Royal College of Art and Imperial College in London, exploring how we might use data-driven technologies to advance principles of good work. And I'm interested in the promise of Web3 to elevate underserved communities and provide avenues for wealth creation and distribution. Our first speaker, however, will be Lira Luis. Lira is an American architect who overcomes challenges via game-winning Hail Mary passes of architecture. She influences groups whether she has a title or not. I know that to be true, and is going from strength to strength, and has led to, that has led to a sustained achievement of triple firsts. So the 2021 Nobel Peace Laureate's newsroom was the first to report on one of her firsts. In 2020, she was the first youngest AAPI, that's Filipino Asian American architect, elevated as a fellow of the Royal Institute of British Architects. That was validated further upon receiving fellowship to the Royal Society of Arts, which is where we met. First recipient of the 2010 American Institute of Architects Athena Young Professionals Leadership Award, and first Talesian Fellow from the Philippines at the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture since its founding. Additionally, ResearchGate has identified her presentation titled Blockchain as Building Blocks for Architecture and Cities as one of the most read on their platform, which she's been presenting since 2019. So it'll wave hello to Lira. Next up after Lira is going to be Caitlin Hughan. Caitlin works between textile design and purpose-driven consumer trends, confronting contemporary tendencies towards disposability. So she holds a strong belief in the power of community to reduce impact. Currently, she's also completing a master's at the Royal College of Art in London. Her textile practice today questions how the function, aesthetic, and materiality of digital tools alter the agency of the user. So she's experienced in using textiles as a tool to educate through artist residences and various research projects across the globe. She's also recently ventured into the digital tools such as NFTs. If physical craft practices do not embrace such a technology, it will, and already has, move on without us. So she's here to question what is left behind in the physical, what is still lacking in the digital. With a background in knitted textile design from Central St. Martin's in London, an extensive luxury retail experience working with British clothing designer Margaret Howell. She also applies her design, material, and consumer knowledge as a researcher and analyst for Amsterdam-based firm Trend Watching. So, a little wave hello to Caitlin. And then after that, we'll have a more open Q&A discussion with Robert Kearns, Adrian Stein, and Glenn Grubbs, who are going to share their projects as examples. And we'll also open that up to questions from the audience. So Robert Kearns is a senior technical architect in the big tech industry, having also worked with the US Department of Defense, IBM, Accenture, Aon, and Abbott, to name a few. He's known to be a driven high performer with proven abilities to implement solutions that make processes better, faster, and cheaper by focusing on the associated management, culture, and technical variables. He's an enterprise infrastructure professional with over 25 years experience within the IT industry and in distributed systems administration, with strengths in installing, configuring, maintaining, designing Windows Server environments and visualization on Apple Mac, Linux, and Windows. The strengths include LAN/WAN, disaster recovery, site designing, and implementation of advanced technical solutions and leadership within corporate environments. Adrian Stein is the creator of the world's first physical NFT installation. And Glenn Grubbs' work is deeply influenced by the petroglyph art of the ancient people of the American Southwest. Modern artists such as Paul Klee and Wilfred Lamb, and the frenetic barrage of information that characterizes the contemporary condition. He expresses his joy of life using color and composition in creating lyrical paintings of his experiences, travels, and memories. Glenn studied art at Radford University in Virginia and Arizona State University, where he earned a Bachelor of Fine Art in Painting in 1992. He continued his studies at ASU, earning a Master of Architecture degree in 1999, and is a licensed architect in the state of Arizona. In addition to his active art studio in the foothills of the Joshua Tree National Park, Glenn currently serves as the Deputy Public Works Officer for the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center in California. He's exhibited internationally, and his artworks have been acquired by private collections in the USA, Canada, Norway, Scotland, and England. So finally, I'm going to hand you over to Lira to begin her presentation on blockchain and NFT in architecture and design. Hi, Lira.
Yes, thank you very much, Liana. So let's go right down to it. Blockchain and NFT in architecture and design. So let's start with it. I bet you're a bit like me. When I first heard the word blockchain or NFT, I didn't know where it could add value to my work. The architecture and design of the future will be based on blockchain technology. We're going to look at how this can help us avoid loss of privacy, data, and accountability, including where it adds value to our architecture and design work, whether that's working from home, traditional, or a virtual practice. So this is a future I want to be a part of. So let's start with blockchain. What is blockchain? Blockchain is a distributed digital ledger. Think of it as a permanent online spreadsheet. It allows users to make peer-to-peer transaction using something called proof of work, or an algorithm that verifies and records the transaction on the blockchain. So as you can see, in that animation, the process eradicates the need for a third party, such as a bank or a payment processor, if this is a cryptocurrency. The blockchain is an unchangeable distributed ledger that, in fact, is decentralized. Proof of work is accepted by nodes as the longest chain, as what you're seeing in the animation. A node may leave and rejoin the network as it wishes, accepting the longest proof of work chain as proof of what happened while it was gone. So after 2010, Satoshi Nakamoto stopped involvement in the Bitcoin project. He was the one who developed it and handed control over to software developer Gavin Andresen. The pseudonym creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, has remained silent ever since, but many people have made claims about who he really is. So NFT, which stands for Non-Fungible Token, is a unit of data stored on that blockchain. So as an architect, how would I define blockchain? So in 3 words: decentralized, ledger, and then technology. For over 2 decades, I've been designing using BIM, building information modeling. And it's incredible how this technology changed since 2001, when I started using ArchiCAD, which is a BIM software, to create virtual building models. At the time, it was still a relatively new practice. The original Bitcoin paper was published 8 years later as the technology behind cryptocurrency. So it's easy to overlook the opportunities for innovation in documentation when you're doing a project like this Bank of America skyscraper that I'm showing you. So as project architect, I found a way to save time, effort, money, and materials through the blockchain-like process flow that eliminated the need for manually produced letter sheets describing each door and window in a schedule. So I would describe this process flow as a primitive version of blockchain for architecture, as it didn't have the comparable computation that a computer programmer would normally apply. So blockchain is a compatible application for business contracts for construction, such as the owner, architect, or designer, owner, contractor, and contractor, subcontractor contracts. So your smart contracts. It would provide a way to record and transfer data that is transparent, safe, audible, and resistant to outages or vandalism or attacks. So just imagine, when integrated, this technology allows for a democratic, decentralized, efficient, and secure project delivery. In a standard business contract, each type of contract for construction has its predetermined terms, whether written or printed form. The difference of a smart contract is that a computer code written inside a blockchain protocol is that protocol. The computing innovation here is that the terms of the contract are enforced by the blockchain network. In other words, it allows stakeholders who don't know or trust one another to collaborate without fear that the other party won't perform or deliver within the terms of the contract. In 2018, a US Senate report said, while smart contracts might sound new, the concept is rooted in basic contract law. So in administering signing of contracts for construction, there is an available blockchain application called BlockUSign. And it's the first ever blockchain-based e-signature tool to integrate directly with Gmail, the email account, so that you can seamlessly sign email attachments directly from that Gmail browser interface. So let's imagine how a work from home or a hybrid or a multi-office practice running on blockchain technology looks like. So you see here in this image that I'm showing you, this layout, this is one example of that blockchain demonstrated that a group of individuals who have never met could operate online within the system and lose the fear that others cooperating on a network will cheat them. So much like how we're presenting this, Liana is in Tokyo, Caitlin is in London, Glenn is in one part of the US in California, I'm in Chicago, and something like that. So the system is composed of nodes, which is a network of all devices running the blockchain protocol and keeps records of all transactions. In the case of a work from home scenario or a hybrid or a virtual practice, they are the devices that your contract workers or employees use to work on your project. So one of the biggest challenges within the traditional virtual practice is trust. Employees in a virtual practice are often contract workers located anywhere in the US, much like this, or the world, and the architect or business owner or designer cannot control when and how they do the specific work. So the difference in a virtual practice running on blockchain technology versus traditional virtual practice is that this mutual distrust is actually the power behind what's making blockchain technology more effective and thus making business collaboration also more effective. So most communications in the virtual practice or in a work from home scenario or hybrid scenario happen by email. These days, your email can either be spoofed or hacked and used for sending ransomware. Just imagine in a virtual practice integrated with blockchain technology, these won't be possible. An example is a blockchain-based email called John McAfee's Swift Mail that you can use at no charge, like Gmail, Yahoo, and others. It's secure communication where an alphanumeric ID replaces your email address and differentiates it from Gmail, Yahoo, and others. So in accessing the web browser is another example. So it's on the upper right-hand corner. The Brave browser is a free and open source blockchain-based browser. It differs from Firefox, Safari, Google Chrome, and others in its ability to block ads, fight malware, and prevent tracking, keeping your information safe and secure, and runs faster. So most collaborations in a work from home scenario, hybrid, or virtual practice happen in the creation and production these days of the BIM model or a platform in a virtual design and construction project such as this. So blockchain can be applied to the BIM VDC markets in many ways. Some of the challenges that face the AEC team are loss of privacy, loss of data in the form of intellectual property, and loss of accountability within stakeholders. Currently, architects issue printed, signed, and sealed construction documents that take precedence over any BIM model. Most AEC teams don't share or work on one BIM model. So what usually happens is that the architect or designer shares a version copy of the BIM model to consultants, the contractor, and the client. They then reconcile data from their individual versions of the BIM model through a clash detection. So just imagine in a blockchain platform, the difference in solution to avoiding these types of losses is the addition of a timestamping layer. You and your stakeholders can work on only one BIM model for the project, and each stakeholder in the VDC project gets the same copy of the same BIM model and not a version of it when you issue documents at different architecture phases. So you issue the documents, it could allow verification of the issue history, streamlining any revision, which is permanently recorded on the blockchain. There is absolutely no method of potential malicious amendment at a later stage. It allows for verification of the document's data, authenticity, origin, integrity, and content without necessarily exposing the content itself. So the BIM model could be signed by the architect and his team before timestamping and can be undeniably claimed to have been in their possession and knowledge at the time of the blockchain timestamping. So referencing the respective blockchain ledger transaction ID, in other words, the hash I mentioned earlier, and as you see here in this animation, the platform, the same BIM model, they can also be held accountable for the content they contribute in the BIM model, including having a strong argument to support their individual intellectual property within the VDC project. So the timestamping feature of blockchain technology can become proof of the prior design existence to any subsequent claim of authenticity by others in the future for the same or similar content. So say, for example, if a renovation or an interior reconstruction or interior design or historic preservation is necessary for the VDC project, you could use this blockchain technology. An example of an existing blockchain platform that can be integrated with some contracts for construction is Stamped. And it's a blockchain timestamping application that operates on a trustless system. So moving on to environments, like really quick, I'm going to show you how Asia is applying blockchain in their cities. So Singapore, India, and China, here are some examples of the many blockchain efforts and applications in cities within Asia. So in my leisure travels to Singapore, I learned about the Smart Nation project, a smart city development that could serve as a model for Asia and perhaps the world. For example, blockchain technology can share information securely between networks in this smart city that Singapore is envisioning. It provides a solution to mitigate traffic jams through information from mobile phones of its citizens to measure bus ride conditions and others. So what happens next is that this information can be used to analyze the wear and tear of road networks and when they need to be upgraded. Meanwhile, in India, its government launched an urban renewal and retrofitting program called the Smart Cities Mission. Most of it is funded through a combined public and private funding model valued at $14 billion US. And in my example earlier, China has also already integrated blockchain in its notarization in real estate transactions. So although Bitcoin is banned in China, it is leading the world in the use and development of blockchain technology. So just imagine, last year, the Chinese Communist Party website released a primer on blockchain technology, including discussion points on its key features, use cases, and challenges. So just one last thing, here are some blockchain-based tools, including an NFT platform that you can actually use now. So NFT platform OpenCEU, which Glenn Grubbs is using extensively, and he'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then for the metaverse, an example is Decentraland, and a blockchain-based email I mentioned earlier, John McAfee, SwiftMail. For contracts, you could use BlockUSign, and then the web browser, a great example of blockchain-based web browser is Brave. So here are some of the resources of where I got all of this information, but let's look at the conceptual interventions and examples on how we could apply this in mitigating climate and biodiversity crisis. And Caitlin will share with us how she explored conceptual ideas on how this might work. Caitlin?
Hi there. So my name's Caitlin. I'm going to talk to you about Pearl, which is a community-driven VR experience that was designed to reduce plastic in our oceans. So I'll give you a quick introduction to our team. We have Benny on the left, Marie, Liana, our lovely host, myself, Caitlin, and Elika on the far right. So we're all designers at the Royal College of Art, and between us we cover a variety of disciplines: mobility design, textile design, engineering, and innovation design. So Pearl was created to empower communities to engage with one of the largest, some might say the largest, environmental challenge our oceans face. I'll give you a little bit of context to the project before we go into the slides. Back in 2021, researchers at the Royal College of Art in London installed some data gathering equipment, which was fixed on board to a ship named the St. Helena, which is operated by Extreme E. I don't know if we have any off-road racing fans in the audience, but Extreme E's ship travelled from ground zero of climate change in Greenland, the Russell Glacier, across the North Atlantic Sea to Sardinia in the Mediterranean, all the while collecting footage of the ocean's surface. So this included information on wildlife, geographical data, and indeed waste, and this is what we were interested in. So plastic makes up 80% of all ocean waste, and that's a stat from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And most of that plastic waste stems from land-based sources such as coastal landfill sites. Little plea here for all designers and architects who have a large part to play in improving our recycle and reuse infrastructure to reduce those landfill sites. But we still have huge blind spots in the data available of plastic in our oceans. So we wanted to design a transboundary solution, and this is where the blockchain comes in. So Pearl is designed as a new digital ocean economy. So in this slide, it shows you the gamification that we decided to use, given the exponential rise in the gaming market. So we decided to look at crowdsourcing through gamification. So Pearl uses data collection from the travelling St. Helena ship to map out the ocean surface in VR, and that's what you can see here. This offers players a higher fidelity experience. They're more emotionally engaged when they're wearing their headsets, and players are encouraged to identify waste floating on the ocean surface. This in turn is used to train an AI system for more efficient waste identification, and that's helping researchers to better track macroplastics as they move across the ocean. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you a little bit more detail on the steps of the game. So in order to incentivize participation, each time a player identifies a piece of waste, that item is generated into a piece of art. So they're able to enter details based on the color, size, if they recognize the brand, and And all this information is collected. Then the very object that they identify is generated into a piece of art, and that's made available to purchase as an NFT. So players' identification efforts are converted into valuable assets that maintain their provenance. Players are encouraged to invest and build a digital collection of artworks that's generated by their findings. Each transaction earns money for an ocean cleanup organisation near where the waste was found. So we target companies that work across identified waste sites such as CleanHub, and unlike ocean protection currencies such as Diatom, Pearl's key advantage in its deep repository of highly specific location data. So that ensures that the funds are directed towards areas where the impact will be highest. And our crowdsourced data collection relies upon the wisdom of the crowds theory. So the more images that are identified, the more materials and plastics that are loaded into the game, and the more accurate the AI becomes. It also means that as waste becomes more scarce, the NFTs become more valuable. Next slide, please. So this comes back to this idea of community. We hope that the players' empowerment in contributing to the ocean waste crisis can play a part in reducing climate anxiety. And we've provided a space for players to connect. So this is the Pearl Waste Park, which is a gallery space where players can display their collected NFT artworks and talk to like-minded individuals about their findings and their shared interests. So we have a triangle of stakeholders. We have our purpose blockchain investors, we have our environmentally conscious gamers and those interested in art, and we hope that this triangle encourages wider audience participation and increases accessibility to ocean cleanup. So as this is our new digital ocean economy that funds a network of cleanup organisations and ensures that existing waste is taken out of the ocean, reframing our perspective of waste from disposable items into finite, valuable relics to be treasured. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. All right, okay, we're going to move on to our Q&A section. I just want to make sure that we have all our panelists here. So do we have Glenn, Adrian, and Robert? Hello.
Can you hear them?
This is Glenn Grubbs. I'm here.
Hi, Glenn. Hi. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Okay, I've got a question for you first, Glenn.
Okay.
How has the technology of creating NFTs shaped your approach to your artwork, if at all?
It has. That's a very good question. Thank you. One of the things that I use in creating my NFTs, I do my work using a program called Procreate. I use it on the iPad. It's a drawing and painting program. And when you do your drawings on that particular program, some of the outputs that you can get out of it, you obviously get the picture, which is a static two-dimensional object. But another item you can get out of it is you can download the movie that shows the process of how you had created the work. So it's like an instant replay. And to me, that's been really informative because you can go back and you can look at the drawing as you're working through it, and you can see decisions that you had made through the process of creating art. And so, as far as how does that relate back to the NFTs? Well, I use a platform called OpenSea. I think it's the largest commercial vendor of NFTs. So I have an account there. It's Grubbs Artist, so, all one word. So if you go to OpenSea, you can take a look and see the products that I have there. But within the way that the NFTs are available on OpenSea, it has different levels of what I would just call security of information. So as you go to OpenSea, you can look and you'll see like the static image, and then it's kind of like a rollover where then you'll have that temporal movie, that you can see, but also buried within the NFT, it's different levels of opacity, right? As you get deeper into it, you can embed information that only the person who has access to that NFT can access that information. So in other words, you can bury like Easter eggs or whatever, is the way I would think of it. So I put in some information or give away freebies or do some other stuff within there. And it's kind of going back towards what Lira was talking about earlier about how you can use this in other commercial applications, is that there's these levels of information. One is readily visible, everybody can see it. The next level, you have to do a little something to get access to that information. And then that deeper information, which can be buried into the NFT, and only special people who have that access can access that. So, in part, it changes your thinking in a way, that, I started to think more about not just, the kinetic aspect of doing the drawing, which was one influence, because you start looking at your instant replays and you start, reflecting on the choices that you made while you were doing the work. So that impacts the work, obviously. But there's another way of thinking about like the information of what do you bury into an artwork that only gets revealed to certain people. And that's kind of an interesting thought. And I think a lot of artists work that way, but with different media and maybe have similar ideas. But NFT is a platform that really enables that kind of possibility.
Right. So there's like a private dialogue between yourself and the owner of the piece of art then.
Precisely.
And so you view NFTs as a platform.
It is a platform for me. I use, because if, the way I think about art, there's the artist has those things that are within the artist. And then there's the work of actually doing the art, right? So I sit down with Procreate and I go through and I, do whatever it is. It comes out of my memory or it comes out of my imagination or whatever, however it comes about. But that's the work that gets done. And then there's the product that's the end result of that. And within Procreate, you have, like I was saying, the static and the dynamic image. And then the fourth piece of that is the observer or the person that you're sharing it with, or, the consumer of that particular artwork. And NFT is really good for being able to do that kind of a thing, where you're able to have exactly like you described, a private dialogue, if you will, with a person who, enjoys that particular artwork.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about trust, because, blockchain is all about trust. It eliminates the need for a trusted third party, but trust in technology needs to be earned, not freely given. There was a report from HSBC from maybe a year or so ago that reported, 80% of people don't understand blockchain. So how can we be expected to trust something we don't understand? Trust now seems to be at an all-time low. Robert, I'd like to ask you about this. What do you think about trust in blockchains and NFTs right now?
Well, coming from a bit of a cybersecurity background, I've learned to trust but verify twice, if not more, if not often. It's a lot of times it's going to be if and not when. So you just need to be on the cautious side of it. So people have obviously seen that, especially in the blockchain, hackers have figured out how to compromise, the more or less the banks, the holding centers, and steal people's information, steal people's bitcoins. And I wouldn't doubt that at some point, then the hackers might find a clever way to steal NFT signatures as well. So having precautions in place and having yourself set up well does take a little bit of research, and in order to know that you can trust whoever you're giving your assets or your valuables to.
Right. And in a broader sense, in trust, how is blockchain going to, I guess, regain the public's trust? Maybe that's a bit too much of a leading question, Robert. I don't know.
It's a broad question you're asking there, because a lot of people don't even understand what these various terminologies mean. The blockchain is a medium, and that's one thing to understand. And Lira did a fantastic explanation of what it is. Because a lot of times you may talk to other people that are in technology and they talk in another language when they share it to you. So, but having it as a medium means that you would have things like Bitcoin or different coin, where you spill your valuable money into a hex number, and you hope that somebody else will give you more money than you put into it. When it comes to NFTs, there's a value associated with those, and that's a different item that would be shared across the blockchain. And I sometimes compare it to NFTs and some of these other things. I compare it to if you own a condo. Well, you don't own the building, you don't own the structure, you own what's in the condo, and you own the airspace that's inside. So some of these things, devices, applications that are on the blockchain, they need to have some trust that gas that you have inside your block has a value to it, has security, so somebody can't violate it or take it away from you. And so there's always a need to be cautious, an ongoing sense of security, and to be proactive and not reactive.
Right. I see that Adrian is with us here. Adrian, I want to fire the first question at you, which is, how has the technology shaped your approach to your artwork?
Yes, for sure, Liana. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that you can hear me just fine.
I can indeed, yeah.
Yes, awesome. That is the first way that technology changed how I view my work, is because it included a lot of problems that came along with it, like me trying to connect for the first half of this presentation. So certainly it has expanded my ability to both view the world, myself, and the tools that I can use to create within it. Mm-hmm. It also presented to me a freedom of information that I didn't know was possible before before being able to be connected to the world. And certainly as a creative, I couldn't have been born at a better time, because now information and access to the tools to make was democratized through the internet.
Right.
Whereas before, had I sought the arts before, it was so institutionalized and so reserved only for those who had access to it, that this is where the myth of the starving artist comes from. I was trained at the Art Institute of Chicago, which I was very lucky to attend. But even there, I found that the institutionalization of information was not, it didn't satisfy my need to learn about tools. So on my own, I discovered Blender, which is an open source and free 3D software, which I use to both design my physical installations and the animations within it. And I found an incredible community of creatives and artists that were there to help each other at no cost. And we were all just doing it for fun for years. I've been on that software for close to 10 years now. And it has been a beautiful way to share information and share creative technology and share the tools that we need to make that. And then with the rise of NFTs and the rise of digital valuables, it just validated the reasons as to why I was making that work. So I would say that the direction of my work just became more free and I guess more validated through technology, because I was able to find a community of artists who wanted the same thing.
Right. It's funny you mentioned the myth of the starving artist there. Yeah, it's a myth we need to shake, frankly. But I guess what I'm getting at is, this technology is now building new communities and new economies, and I guess avenues for enrichment for artists. I think the creative director of Instagram recently gave a TED talk on this. Buying the NFT of an artist is you're basically buying shares in the future of that artist. So you're sort of selling equity in your future and then kind of codifying that into a smart contract. So how have you then navigated this new economy?
It has been really interesting because I definitely came at it with a lot of questions, and mostly philosophical questions as to what it would mean for us as humans, because I was already coming into my work with the questions of what does it mean for us to start building this virtual identity of ourselves. And I saw so much kind of mental activity going into these like filters and face tuners and the influencer economy and the influencer sort of psyche that we've all been it's kind of been thrust upon us. And I was very skeptical at the start, very skeptical as to in the same questions that a lot of people had. How can this ever have value? Why would this have value? And so I just came up with a couple of collections on OpenSea just to test the waters, to see how it went. And the reception was really good from the people who did acquire them, who keep on being connected with my art to this day, and who now I have a connection with too. And then through my installation, Quantum Mirror, which is that immersive NFT installation, I was able to really bring people into an environment where they were able to physically experience a digital reality. It's a true mix of a virtual and a physical existence, where viewers are just enveloped by these digital images and images of themselves. And it was just really interesting to see people interacting with art through my NFTs and keeping a connection with me through that channel, and also a connection to themselves and their digital identities through my installation. And yeah, it's been really beautiful, honestly, because like I said, it's validated my reason to keep doing this, because now I don't have to depend on a gallery and museum system, which I have thought for my entire life that it needs to be challenged in the ways that it's being challenged now. And I have a direct connection and correlation to my collectors. So it's been really, really, really just validating. It's worked for me more on a kind of emotional level than it has at an economical level, but it's been really fruitful.
Right. You mentioned communities a good few times there, and how important it is, like community joining or community building in this space. What do you think about that, Caitlin, about the role of community in with this technology in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just so much potential. I mean, the fact that it's this decentralized thing where there's no central power, it automatically elevates these, communities all over the world. There's also, it kind of breaks down these boundaries that we see. It goes back to kind of trust, what you were saying at this one of your initial points. Just in the UK at the moment, we're going through this crisis yesterday, where the Prime Minister's ethics advisor has resigned. There's not that much trust in kind of in governments. I think the UK isn't the only place, but these kind of these decentralized systems that elevate these communities, I think there's so much hope. Also, I mean, for Pearl, when we designed it, the problem of plastic waste, for example, is a global problem, and blockchain gives you these solutions that kind of bypass these boundaries that are political or regional, and it goes back to communities who are want change and often have more effective solutions when they're closer to the ground.
Right. I want to go back to another question as well that Adrian just posed. that's been stuck in my mind, which is, what does this mean for us as humans? And I believe, Adrian, you were talking about the shift into the digital space. You know, we can see it hugely now in the gaming space, but also, I hesitate to use the word metaverse because I feel like it's been corralled by, like, held hostage by Facebook. But we'll use the term metaverse to talk about the digital space. So I'll open this up to everyone, but what does this mean for us as humans, this mass exodus into a digital space where I know I can spend dozens of hours a week playing Breath of the Wild or in a virtual space and feel very comfortable. So I guess we'll start with you again, Adrian, because you're the one who posed it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that and by the way, Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite games, so kudos to that. I think it really stretches the boundaries of what we define as identity and what we define as belonging. We used to think of those two things being extremely physical, contained to only our bodies, contained to only the environment that is around us. Mm-hmm. But I think that through the metaverse and through the internet and through being connected to these online communities and through the blockchain, we have redefined that to be within those spaces. To our identity can be stretched to an online virtual identity where we can express things that maybe our body doesn't allow us to express, whether mm-hmm. that is your gender expression or even your physical expression as a human, whether that is your poetic expression, or even your connection to an ideology, whether it's positive or negative, depending on where you're looking at it from, or a community that isn't around you. And then environmentally, you're not corralled to the place that you were born in, to the place that you have to be in, either for family or economic reasons or anything. You can be mm-hmm. in many places at once. And I think that for those reasons, it's liberating. But the ways that it can become dangerous is that it can disconnect us from allowing those changes to happen in our physical space, right? It can kind of isolate us from being able to change and affect our present communities with progress.
Mm-hmm. And I'll chime in on that, on what Adrian said. There is a book that physicist Michio Kaku wrote. It's called Physics of the Future. And it describes exactly what Adrian was describing, that in the future, and this is science-based, in the future, people will have avatars, which is, kind of like the direction where the metaverse is heading. And I'm actually excited, right? I'm actually excited about this because you go in there and it's almost like you're transcending the human experience. Like you could be, he described a day in the life in that book where you could be like, say, 80 or 90 years old, but then in your avatar, you could be any age, really. Right. And so then it's really your functioning. It's really your being. It's almost like you're existing not just in the physical realm, but in multiple dimensions. Which again, I'll quote another book by physicist Lisa Randall. It's called multiple. What is it? I can't remember. It's parallel universes or something to that effect. But Harvard physicist Lisa Randall wrote a book about the multiple dimensions of space. So then it gives architecture and design another dimension to what we're traditionally familiar with, which is the 3D or now the 4D. So then the metaverse gives us that level of transcendence as human beings.
Right. Because we're seeing that now with VTubers. I don't know if you know about them, but they're basically YouTubers who are entirely virtual, So there's a person behind them, but there's a virtual character overlaid.
Right. And one, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it doesn't need to be, they don't need to be human anymore, So a lot of them are these kind of hybrid creatures, and they're ghosts or they're spirits or they're animals,
Right, and one very specific example, a concrete example, is the Swedish singer ABBA, which is having a concert in London, right, in the UK.
I'm dying to go.
Yeah, no,
Virtual
seriously,
concert.
like, so this is a great example of the metaverse. So then they're attached to these devices where they're not physically performing, because obviously they can't perform as energetically as they were in their youth, but they will be singing, right? But then they would have holograms on stage, and that theater, that concert venue or theater, was actually designed by an architect. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, Liana, because you're obviously, or Caitlin, you're based in the UK, and this is happening in the UK.
Get to ABBA now, Caitlin. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, that's my go-to karaoke song.
Right, but this is the great example of a integration of the metaverse, the blockchain. Well, NFT, they're not selling anything unless they're selling their music through the NFT, an NFT drop.
Right. So
Yeah.
Lira, let me ask you this then. You know, digital real estate or virtual artifacts seem to be, I don't know if I want to use the phrase weathering the storm, but they seem to be more robust at the moment than digital art. So why do you think that is?
Yeah, so then everybody, you know, the NFT started off with the selling of digital art, which is, you know, that's why there's a debate whether is NFT an art form or a platform. However, the benefit of blockchain and NFT, as I foresee it for architects and designers, is more on the smart contracts or on real estate, because this real estate industry is where most architects and designers operate, because you design spaces for them. And the real estate industry is the first one to actually adopt or implement the smart contracts. And smart contracts are based on that blockchain technology, which is, you know, because of the privacy issue and the ability of it to be secure in a trustless system. And so then this would thrive more, I believe, because you're not selling anything, but you're integrating both the blockchain and the NFT in the process. You're not like, you're still making money because you're operating a business, but it's not the driving force as compared to the traditional NFT drops when it first exploded, like on the internet, I think last year.
Yeah.
So, and this is why, you know, it's doing better than the digital art, those who are selling digital art at the moment.
Yes, I guess, yeah, what you're saying is a lot of those projects were, I guess with any new technology, there's a bit of a cash grab or a gold rush happening. And I suppose there's a culling of just flat out cash grabs. I mean, there are certain NFT communities that are weathering the storm really, really well, like Crypto Coven, you know, ones that are built around a community, built around something more than just like buy this and you'll make money, essentially. So I want to talk about the environment, and this question is open to everyone. How do we reconcile the proof of work approach to blockchain technology with the environment? I'm going to start with Caitlin, but then I'd like to open this to everybody.
Hiya. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, it definitely has its impact on the environment. I think we all need to be honest about that. I don't think we can hide away from the fact that this is very highly energy intensive structure. But I think if we're open and honest about that, there are definitely things that are happening that are is going in the right direction, but I think, I don't know if other people can speak more about the specifics of more environmentally friendly versions of I think Stellar.
Like Stellar Lumens, yeah. Well,
yeah.
How about Robert? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, there's some criticism about the blockchain and, you know, the various ways that the methodologies are using it, because you have to have massive data centers and massive infrastructure that consumes a lot of energy. And in some cases, I think somebody estimated that the amount of energy being expended to the blockchain in a whole is comparable to a third world nation. So that when you consider that, there's a lot of criticisms of is the blockchain, is the use of the blockchain for NFTs or Bitcoin, is it functional and good for the environment? So that's where a lot of criticisms come from. The backside of that is that there's been an effort in the blockchain community, be it Bitcoin and using that, to promote the green side of it. Whether you got windmills, geothermal, wave power, or a variety of other things to offset what you might be burning or doing to create the energy that you need. So that energy side needs to be there. And part of the effect of the people that are involved in this is that there is an awareness, and as almost like the family of people that are into blockchain and understand it, also have an innate feeling towards using less energy, being green about things, and being conscious of the environment, and having a greater awareness of it. So it's almost like something that comes with the people.
Right, right. Would anyone else like to comment on that?
Yeah, there is so this is Lira speaking. There is a debate, a constant debate, that it takes a lot more energy to mine, to actually mine cryptocurrency, and it's using up a lot more of that energy. In fact, there is Ryuichi, the musician, the pianist, Sakamoto, I think, was criticized for actually dropping his music on the NFT because of this. However, with any new technology, just like when, say, solar panels first started, you have to look at it from the perspective that people are constantly working on this to improve them. So
right.
By the time it's been improved, yes, everybody's aware of the environmental implications and the amount of energy that's being used. But at the same time, there are other blockchain-based or cryptocurrency or even NFT-based systems that actually use less energy. They're just not as vocal, or they don't have a louder platform as, say, your more traditional cryptocurrency or larger cryptocurrencies.
Right, and there's
this is Glenn Grubb. I was going to offer a counterpoint. One of the counterpoints I would offer is, if you think about the embodied energy of things. So if I created creating a traditional painting, or I'm creating traditional architectural drawings in the traditional way, and I'm using paper, and so there's embodied energy of the paper, and there was embodied energy of all the other processes that went into creating that. And then there's the embodied energy of me having to transport that to somebody. But if we look at this blockchain, now, there is an embodied energy in the creation of that work, but the transfer of it, it's there's some amount of energy there, but it's not the same amount of energy as there is in traditional things that have a material value to them.
Right.
If you go all the way back to the source of where things were sourced. So, in the end, things are actually, it becomes more efficient, in that counter view, when you say, hey, this thing's now been digitized and I can send it around the world. And I did it here in California right this minute, and 5 seconds later it's in, London.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's so many questions I would like to ask further. That's an excellent point, Glenn. By the way, the embodied energy, but I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up. So if any viewers have questions, you can submit them now, and we will get back to you afterwards. This has been such a lovely discussion. It flew by. So I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for presenting and speaking today. And thanks, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Coffee in the
Thank
chat.
you, guys.
The sun is coming up here now in Tokyo. So right to start my day. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Please send questions in, and we'll get the panelists to answer and send them back.
Thank you. Thank you again, everyone, for a really insightful discussion today. I felt like we could go on for at least another hour. So perhaps we'll have an opportunity to revisit this again in the future. I'd like to again extend a really warm thank you to our presenters today and our panelists. Thank you to those who attended. And just a friendly reminder that this will be available via the NeoCon Hub until July the 15th. The recording will be available there. Again, thank you again, everyone, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Goodbye.